Rewind the dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly as we hear from John and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads. And if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show. And if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Rewind-A-Dynamite. I am John Pollock here, alongside Wai Ting on a Wednesday night. How are you, Wai?
Good. Yourself?
I'm doing okay. I was up super early this morning, and I know you were either up super late or up super early, or maybe both.
Yeah, I was up a bit early. It was just I mean, as many people know, my sleep schedule is all over the place, and so it was just like one of those where, you know, sleep for 2 hours, wake up, and then couldn't get back to sleep type of days. So apologies if my energy's not there.
Well, together, Wai, we will get through this one. True or false? You came by my house at 7:45 this morning.
About that time. A little after that, actually. But
okay.
Yeah, I dropped some stuff off.
I was actually, you couldn't see inside, but what I was doing at that time was having my daughter in a stroller and was walking her back and forth for a good part of 45 minutes at that time as you came by. So you could have
I'm glad really I didn't wake you up.
Come on in for all the fun, yes.
Yeah. Well, I might actually make another stop because our good friend Sean Levine dropped off some Girl Scout cookies for us. So,
did he send the? What kind?
Samoas and Thin Mints.
Oh man,
he's the best,
dude. The Samoas were life changing. Oh,
they're incredible. I think I might have some for Braden and Davey as well.
Wow. Well, Sean Levine, thank you very much. Those Samoas, MVP. Oh my God, those things were really, really good.
I can't believe we don't have those here.
No, we don't. I'd never even heard about them until they did that Edge and Christian skit. I had no idea about these Samoas until they did the skit about them. And it's like, we get Girl Scout cookies here, but for my whole life, it's just been the basics, like the vanilla and the chocolate. Like they would come in a combo pack. And that's the extent of our Girl Guide cookies.
The Canadian Girl Scout cookies are not they're nothing. They're basically Oreos, you know, packaged. But I mean, the ones in the U.S. are far different, and certainly Samoas is. Everybody talks about the Thin Mint, but the Samoas are the elite of the Girl Scout cookies.
All right, I am putting this off. We have a daunting show to get through. Just a lot coming down here that we're going to get into. But before we get into all of the news, and we're going to be talking about Jim Crockett Jr., a pretty packed edition of Dynamite, and loads of other stuff. Wai, there's a big sale going on at the Post Wrestling store. Would you like to alert people to how they can get in on this special sale?
Yeah, all patrons of the Post Wrestling Cafe, we're doing a series of rolling deals this month, and this week we're giving 15% off of our Post Wrestling Marvel t-shirt in celebration of WandaVision's finale, which is only one sleep away, John. So for the rest of this week until Monday, you can get 15% off of that shirt if you're a Post Wrestling Cafe patron. Just look in your email or just go to postwrestlingcafe.com and scroll down a few posts and you'll get the coupon code.
All right, so check that out. A rolling sale that's going on all month long. You can check that out. I also want to make mention, we have a pretty great show up on the cafe with a review of WrestleMania 6. We spent nearly 3 hours chatting about this show with lots of a very Toronto-centric show. We were able to dig into some of the local news coverage at the time going into WrestleMania 6. We had Dan the Mouth Bransky join us, and a big review of a 3.5-hour WrestleMania card headlined by Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior, where Wai and I also revealed our first visits to the Toronto Skydome, now Rogers Centre.
You know, I didn't realize the mention of Norm DaCosta would elicit so much reaction. Got some feedback from Rob Bahari with his Norm DaCosta anecdotes.
Probably scared Norm DaCosta from ever wanting to go near wrestling again.
And I'm going to give you a scoop. Our friend Donovan Fernandez, Norm DaCosta is apparently one of his family friends. Gave him all his wrestling magazines growing up. He used to tell people he was his uncle. I don't know if that's true or not, but maybe it is. But yeah, a lot of Norm DaCosta popular around these parts.
He was, I mean, if you read the Toronto Star, I always remember him covering soccer, but there was like 92 onward. Like I remember once or twice a week, like him having that wrestling column, and just the novelty of seeing pro wrestling covered in the Toronto Star was pretty interesting before he got out of covering wrestling. So anyway, we go into a lot of Toronto history in this show. It's almost 3 hours. It's up on the cafe. Also, we announced on Monday that we are going to be hosting Post Podcast Day on Saturday, April the 3rd. What that is going to be is a 6-hour live stream, not all that unlike what we are doing as we speak. All members of the Post Wrestling Cafe will have access to this, and it's going to be 6 live shows that we are going to be presenting throughout the day, including a live Ask Away with myself and Mr. Ting, and we'll be announcing the other shows as well as the people involved in the coming weeks. But that's Saturday, April 3rd, noon Eastern, we will be starting, and all members of the Post Wrestling Cafe will have access.
Yeah,
so let the countdown begin, Way. You can point to a sign somewhere.
Oh, we need to put a sign up for sure.
Yep.
But we're going to get all of our friends involved, and we'll announce the shows to come.
Yes, some fun ideas that we have planned for that day. All right, let's go into the news. So within the last half hour, the news was coming down. I think it was first Robert Gibson that had posted that Jim Crockett Jr., who we knew had been in very bad health and had been placed into hospice care, has apparently passed away. So this is all coming down just in the past half hour. And I thought we should start off just talking a bit about someone who is an extremely influential figure, specifically in the mid 70s and throughout the 80s in relation to Jim Crockett Promotions. And just to trace the lineage back, Jim Crockett Sr., his father, began as an entertainment promoter in the Carolinas, and kind of the cluster of what would make up Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling would be the Carolinas and Virginia. Those would be their core states that they promoted. But it was not just the family promoted baseball, concerts. Wrestling was one portion of what they promoted, but pro wrestling would eventually become what they were most well associated with. And Jim Crockett Sr. promoted for years, right up until his death in 1973. He had a heart condition and died. And at that point, it was looked upon, will the business just be left to the sons? And the oldest son was Jim Crockett Jr. And his brothers were David Crockett, who you would remember as the broadcast partner calling the 605 show with Bob Caudle for all those years, and Jackie Crockett, who worked as a camera operator in the company. And then they had a sister, Frances, and they ended up leaving the company to Frances's husband, John Ringley. So he was the one who came up with the Mid-Atlantic name and was the one running the company. He also brought in George Scott as a booker, but then ended up the marriage dissolved, and thus John Ringley was on the outs with the family, and that's how Jim Crockett Jr. Came into power running the company. And that's where you saw a big shift with George Scott coming into book, was kind of alternating from a tag-based territory to a singles territory, built heavily around Johnny Valentine, who was a big star in that part of the country, but also bringing in young talent. Like, this is where Ric Flair was emerging. Ricky Steamboat came in around 1977. You had Greg Valentine, Wahoo McDaniel, and that was kind of the building of this territory where it started to pick up a lot of impact in the late 70s into the 80s. And they ended up where they went through different bookers. After George Scott left, Dory Funk Jr. came in. He assembled a committee, and the committee was in place when they promoted the first Starrcade event. And that's when Jim Crockett Jr. was leaning heavily on Dusty Rhodes, but it was prior to Dusty officially becoming booker, although he was the one who named it. And we actually did a very lengthy show on the very first Starrcade in the Rewind-A-Way archives that has a lot of the history of this time period. But that's when Dusty, shortly after the first Starrcade, comes in And that's where Jim Crockett Promotions, it expands significantly, where it's going from just being kind of based in the Mid-Atlantic region to growing national. Because what happens is in 1985, that's when Vince McMahon Jr. had the 6:05 time slot for an hour, and Jim Crockett Jr. ends up buying out Vince McMahon for $1 million, gets the time slots on WTBS, and they've got the huge national television window, not just on Saturdays, but also a Sunday slot on top of all the syndicated networks that they're providing television for. And they're going all over the country to mixed success. There's areas of the country that they thrived in, and then there were other parts that they didn't do so well. But this was at a time where they were making just enormous money and built around that core of Flair and Dusty and the Horsemen being the key heels throughout this whole time. And you've got the rise of Magnum. It was kind of almost eerie when we're talking about Jim Crockett Jr. and seeing tonight's show of Dynamite, where you had some of those principal characters, not just Tully, but of all people, you had JJ on the show tonight, and the segment with Arn Anderson as well. So, business is on fire at this point in 85, 86, even into 87. And it's 87 where certainly the breaks in Jim Crockett Promotions are taking deeper form. And you can look at it from a lot of different problems that they had, one of which has been pointed to was several issues connected with Starrcade in 87. That was the year they took it out of Greensboro and went to Chicago with the hope of, making this a more national event, going to, in theory, a more prestige market in Chicago. But, they drew less going to Chicago. But the real killer was that Vince McMahon, the hope was that they would do, because this is when Vince McMahon announces the first Survivor Series for that year in 87, that the two pay-per-views would air on the same day. And the hope from the cable companies, well, this is great. We'll get one in the afternoon and one in the evening, and fans will buy both. And Vince McMahon put this ultimatum in place where he told the cable companies, if you carry Starrcade instead of Survivor Series, you can't have both, and then you won't get WrestleMania next year. And most of the cable providers all got freaked out by this fear that they would lose WrestleMania, because you're coming off WrestleMania 3. WWF's very hot at this time. So many of them, I think all but 5 providers, go with WrestleMania. So Starrcade gets hit significantly. And the way the contracts were structured in Jim Crockett Promotions is that if you had a big amount owed to you, they would shore up everything at the end of the year with these balloon payments. So you didn't have the Starrcade money that you had hoped for, and you had all these big payments because they're spending significant money to keep all these stars in the NWA, your Road Warriors, your Lugers, everybody else I mentioned. So going into 88, there are a lot of problems with Jim Crockett Promotions, and you're not creating those new stars at the same level. You've been running with kind of the same number of people for many years. And with Dusty Rhodes, there was a lot of criticism about his booking. And this all comes to a head later in 1988 when they realize how much they're in debt. They had an accountant by the name of Dave Johnson who's kind of crunching the numbers, and all of a sudden they've got a significant amount of debt, and that sped up the sale process where Turner Sports ends up buying Jim Crockett Promotions, which, some in the Crockett family did not advocate for the sale. Others thought that it was the only choice to make, and they were able to get out at that point. Jim Crockett Jr. took on a consulting position with the company and then tried to get back into the business several years later, but it was such a different industry at this point that, he essentially just retired and went to lived in Dallas. But you go back to that time period, especially from, I would say, 84 to 87, this was a significant competition between the WWF and Jim Crockett Promotions, the NWA by its extension. And I would definitely recommend people, if you want to check out a great documentary on Jim Crockett Jr. and Jim Crockett Promotions, it is The Good Old Days on High Spots on their streaming network. They have that documentary up there. I know that Jim Crockett Jr., he hasn't done a lot of interviews, but he did do some over the last few years. He did a Starcast I know that Conrad Thompson did an interview with him not all that long ago. And he also did a sit down for this High Spots documentary that was out there. But an incredibly important figure, a former NWA president. And when you talk about the 80s and the WWF's expansion period, you cannot talk about that without the competition from Jim Crockett Promotions, where they battled the WWF very intensely in several markets, including in the WWF's backdoor of Baltimore, Philadelphia. It was certain areas they could not have that same success. And I think a lot of people look at that in those core states, they were red hot, and it was not the population base that you had in the Northeast from that the WWF had to draw from, which was very impressive that they were able to do the level of business that they did consistently. So very significant figure, an unfortunate passing, but one that based on the updates we had heard over the past week, this was sadly something that looked to be inevitable.
What sort of tributes do you expect from any of the wrestling promotions in the next week?
I would be shocked if there isn't something on the pay-per-view. I think just the fact that it came down so late, I think AEW 100% will, at the bare minimum, have a graphic, but maybe even something more for Jim Crockett Jr. I don't know if you can expect anything on the WWF side to note his passing, unless it's something on the website. It's very unlike them to kind of pay attention to someone that was never associated with WWF, at least directly. But I mean, there's going to be a lot written about him, just looking back at his importance. And it's going to be really the history of Jim Crockett Promotions, that it's a fascinating history to go through and read. But the people out there that I'm sure will have a lot of stories about him, working closely with him, like a J.J. Dillon, for instance, just seeing him on the screen tonight, like he was kind of Dusty's booking assistant. So he worked in the office with Dusty. It was a very small office in terms of the people. Like when you look at the competition between WWF and Jim Crockett Promotions, like it was like Jim Crockett Promotions was like a mom and pop operation, even as they expanded to such a huge degree. Like it was still like a very small number they had working out of that office compared to the WWF that was just this growing juggernaut with this huge office in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering what sort of things you might see on NWA's return. It's on until the 21st, but
right.
They do hold the Crockett Cup. So I would expect at least some sort of, big deal made of it on their shows.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot over the next couple of days, just in terms of looking back at his impact and those he worked with. I mean, it was like a who's who in the 80s of, big stars that came through Jim Crockett Promotions. So, yes, probably a lot more to come on him. Let's move on to a few other notes. So the NXT story, I think we should talk about here. It was first reported by the Mat Men podcast, citing a source at NBC that it would appear that NXT could be moving to Tuesday nights. And since this time, Dave Meltzer has stated that if it's not a done deal, it's very close. So it's not been officially announced, but I mean, this can't be a completely out of left field news item, because when we saw the USA Network absorbing some of the NHL programming with the, dissolving the NBC Sports Network, this was a conflict that presented itself on the schedule. So I can't say it's this crazy story by any stretch, but the idea of NXT moving to Tuesday nights way, I mean, we saw the examples last summer when NXT had to move to Tuesday nights for several weeks when AEW ran unopposed, that this is going to mean an increase for both sides. But it definitely opens up a potential higher ceiling for AEW without head-to-head wrestling competition.
Certainly. I mean, I wonder if this was as much a decision from USA or if it was WWE's. And I think everybody benefits. The audience benefits. We've had our fun, playing sides and comparing numbers on Thursdays. And I'm kind of ready to move on from all that and be able to enjoy both shows appropriately. So it's a bit, easier, I think, for everybody.
Do you know what this schedule is going to look like on a weekly basis?
Every day. Sometimes multiple times a day.
Sometimes multiple.
So, I mean, what's the fallout going to be for a company like Impact? Do you expect them to move?
The thing with Impact moving is that they have put so much into that Tuesday, even adding that pre-show. I would consider moving to Thursdays. But the thing is, like, if you listen to Cody Rhodes' Q&A today, I mean, he certainly was asked the question, and his answer came off like he's expecting this move, but he also said like twice he's not going to be surprised if something else pops up on Wednesday nights. He's not looking like this is going to be like they're going to be free and clear of competition for long, at least wrestling wise. So, and that's going to be WWE's MO, I think, of constant content creation and filling up even more time if possible, especially if they can be paid for it. So I think if you're Impact short term, yeah, you could look at Thursdays, for instance. But I mean, I think we're going into a landscape where there's going to be like Major League Wrestling pretty much every night of the week, that I don't know if moving one night, it's going to prove to be any different like a year from now, where who knows what more could enter the marketplace. So I'm curious to see what Impact's move is if they immediately pick up and move to another night. You would think they have more of that flexibility given it's Access TV, but that remains to be seen. What do you think they should do?
So,
because this will hurt Impact.
I don't know if there's a great move either way. Like how often are you going to move aside for somebody else? But I think for their sake, just to maybe able to grab some of the headlines from the next day, Thursday certainly makes the most sense right now. But at the same time, AEW's got another hour coming. Who knows?
Where does that hour go? What night of the week does that hour go?
Beats me, man.
Like that's going to land. I mean, Tony Khan's pretty adamant about not wanting to run against the NFL, which would make Mondays and Thursdays unlikely. Like Tuesday might end up being that day.
Yeah. Could be
depending on the
show.
TNT schedule, like where it's, that's going to be a TNT decision of where this hour ends up.
Yeah. Could be a weekend show. But they're running out of, days, to be the sole focus. And, that makes it even tougher for your lower, tiers beneath AEW and WWE. Company like MLW, a company like New Japan, trying to maybe find a place on the TV schedule. Very difficult.
Going to Raw on Monday night, this was a very interesting number that they did, built around the teasing of The Miz versus Bobby Lashley throughout the show, and then paying it off in the last segment of the show. So they did 1,884,000 viewers and a 0.58 in the demo. And if you just take those two numbers, neither jumps out at you. As I've said, Raw has fallen into this pattern where it's doing 1.8 million. It's just a question of what in between 1.8 and 1.9, what are they going to do? But that's pretty much your average that they have settled into. And a 0.58, I mean, it's a fine number. They were tops on cable, but it's not a gigantic number by their standards. It's what they're averaging. But when you break down just the patterns throughout the show and how the different demos did, like this was a good number for Raw. Their 18 to 34 audience was up 50%, their highest since Legends Night in that demo. Women 12 to 34, whatever it was up 67%. And this was the best number among women 12 to 34 since the night after WrestleMania last year.
Interesting.
Like that's
The Miz. Is it Lashley?
I think that it's certainly, you have to look at that there was definitely this, whatever you want to say about whether you like this story or not involving Miz and Lashley and the tactics taken throughout the show, I think the positive you take from this is the notion of having a story that weaves itself throughout 3 hours and you pay it off at the end. And you hope it's a captivating story. This one, listen, people stuck around in a way higher percentage this week than most weeks. They lost 5% in the third hour. Their demo stayed like consistent pretty much almost the whole show.
I think it would be a good philosophy to try to make entertaining TV every single week.
Yes, but this specifically about not just setting up a match that you have the guys come out in segment 1 and then you do it in the third hour at the end. This was, twists and turns throughout the show. You had the key players in multiple segments. It was like a show-long story. And some people didn't like it, but the actual thought process, I think, is a positive for this show, that you have, stories that play themselves out throughout the show rather than just match, angle, match, backstage interview, match, backstage, and then we do our main event, whether it be at the end of hour 2 or the end of hour 3. This is more of, making your key players prominent throughout the show rather than just in 1 or 2 segments.
We'll see what lessons they can learn from it.
You can't do this every week. Like this was your ultimate, like, paying off a big title change at the end of the show. You're not going to be able to have something like this each week, but I am interested to see, like, that countdown clock. I think we're going to see that plenty. So that was, those are the key things from Raw to look at. But I mean, in the third hour, several demos were up in hour 3. Men 18 to 49, adults 18 to 34, men 12 to 34. So it was really, it was like 2 demos that dropped 15.5%, 16% in the third hour. Everything else stayed relatively well in the third hour. So you do have to look at this, the structuring of Raw as a success for this week. They also did 218,000 viewers in Canada. New Japan Pro Wrestling not expected to use Marty Scurll. Last week, there was the Fightful report that he was backstage at the New Japan Strong tapings, and then Emily Pratt adding that he did in fact shoot an angle with Rocky Romero. Today, it was noted by the Super J-Cast and Observer that New Japan is not going to be using him, whether it be on Strong or anywhere else. It looks like this past week and the backlash that came once this news was made public was enough that they're not willing to go through and air this angle that was shot.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the timeline of these moves, and I think it sends a message to anybody who's thinking about hiring Marty Scurll, that you'll be met with this sort of public reaction, and I'm sure it gives plenty of people pause about, maybe being seen on a show, even with Marty Scurll.
I think this gives great pause to a lot of promotions. Like in the last week, we've seen what happened with the fallout with Paul Robinson in Progress. This event that Joey Ryan was involved with that just was canceled within a day once it was made public. And then this with Marty Scurll. Like, I think this will give pause to promotions, knowing that there is going to be vitriol from the public of, usage of certain talent, at least now. So, that's the latest with Marty Scurll. Do not expect to see him in this angle on New Japan Strong. Are you keeping up with Young Rock?
No.
So I saw Tuesday night's episode, and the story is that Leah Maivia, the grandmother of Dwayne Johnson, the mother of Ata, is running the territory in Hawaii. This is after Peter Maivia has passed away, and she's running the territory. And there's this promoter that is trying to scoop up all her talent. And it's this promoter, this Asian promoter, who is wooing them with the promise of action figures and glazed ham to try and lure talent away. And who's the promoter that's helping out Leah the most? It's good old Vince McMahon, who they say is the only promoter that lets his talent work for other territories. In an era where that was, you didn't have exclusive contracts at this time, but you have pretty much the person, so you have this default promoter who's like trying to take all the territorial stars to leave the promoters high and dry and not give them any notice. Like, this is Vince McMahon's MO in the 80s, but it's been assigned to this other promoter, while Vince McMahon is the good guy that is willing to let Leah use Rocky Johnson, even though Rocky works for him. It was rather amusing to see how Vince McMahon was painted, and then taking the archetype of Vince McMahon and assigning it to this non-real promoter that did not exist. other than his attributes existed very much in the form of Vince McMahon Jr. throughout the 80s.
You know, I know the show is very much a dramatization of real life events, but man, kind of shows you perhaps where his allegiances are in history, at least.
Well, at least in this episode, I mean, they were not painting Vince McMahon as any kind of like ruthless promoter that was just trying to, take the top territorial stars and bring them all. Like the Junkyard Dog, like that's really like JYD leaves Mid-South. He's advertised for dates and leaves them high and dry to go to Vince McMahon, like no notice. And in this one, it's like JYD. He's been wooed away by a ham. And they catch him like trying to sneak out of the hotel and just check out, and they catch him. So anyway,
incredible.
That's the latest. What's going on Young Rock? All right, with that, let's get into a pretty newsworthy edition of AEW Dynamite, and immediately they start the show off with Cody Rhodes and Red Velvet against Shaquille O'Neal and Jade Cargill. And while we're mentioning Cody Rhodes, we have the Q&A up on the site if you want to check out the audio of today's conference call that Cody Rhodes did. But they ended up starting off the show with this.
I think it makes a lot of sense. The purpose of this match is to draw as many eyeballs to your show so that people can know about Revolution. And, rather than... They could have main evented with this, but I think it makes as much sense to start off the show with it.
They did the opposite of what Raw tried to do. Like, holding you until the very last segment, and hopefully you're going to stick around for 3 hours and get the payoff at the end. They decided, let's start off at what should be the peak of the show, but do so much that it hooks you. Like this, the first 90 minutes of this show were incredibly fast-paced, and it was a pretty unbelievable show when you're looking at all the things they presented to you. They had surprises. They had, I thought this was an excellent go-home show, just for what the overall goal was of selling you on this pay-per-view on Sunday. Like, they made this show feel very special. It had one of those, night after WrestleMania Raw type of vibes to it.
I really wanted to see a bit more from Moxley and Omega, as to me, that's the main event. I certainly would have wanted to see them end the show with some sort of presence, but I think they were really banking on people sticking around for the countdown show for that.
Do you know who was backstage hanging out with Jon Moxley?
Yeah, UFC...
Jorge Masvidal.
Yes, right.
I was thinking for sure we were going to see Moxley with Masvidal, and Masvidal teaching him, the flying knee or something.
Wow, his own V-trigger.
Yeah. You've got exploding barbed wire. I've got an explosion to show you here. I thought for sure we'd get Masvidal on the show with Moxley, but no, we did not. So it's Cody and Red Velvet against Shaq and Jade Cargill. Shaq just looks enormous. And we go to the flashback to the angles starting in November involving the four. And Cody and Shaq start the match with a collar and elbow tie-up, and Shaq sending Cody into the corner. Very Hogan Rock-esque here at the start. And they traded chops in the corner with Cody selling huge for Shaq and giving you enough physicality off the top. Listen, Shaq is... He's Shaq. He's not the most mobile of guys, but you could tell this guy was taking this seriously right from the get-go. He was out there. It's it's not going to overdo what he can't do, but seemed to be having a good time doing this at the beginning. And Cody was just going to bump around for him and knew that he had to be the glue in this match.
This guy wasn't doing moonsaults, but I'll tell you what, Shaq would have fit in perfectly on the undercard of WrestleMania 6. No one would have been able to tell the difference that he wasn't a wrestler.
He was definitely moving around a lot more than Andre was in that tag match. So Jade is tagged in, and it's so Red Velvet's in. They trade forearms. She's doing push-ups, and then there's a high cross by Velvet, and Jade rolls through into a fall-away slam, and then the kip-up, and pie faces Cody, who then comes in and runs at Shaq with a knee. Got a figure four by Jade onto Velvet, and after that, Shaq comes in, and in his tribute to Brody Lee, delivers a powerbomb to Cody.
I guess.
Cool spot.
You think this was... Oh, because he did the arm movement as well.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, sure.
Cody then pokes him in the eye, and slams Shaq. And I'm thinking, like, is that going to be, because always in these matches, you're looking, what's going to be our viral clip? What's going to be our Sports Center audition clip? And they did the slam, but that was not going to be it. Jade comes in, spine buster. Cody pulls her off of Red Velvet. And then after these tables had been set up on the floor, they're just lingering on the floor. You know they're coming into play. He leaps onto Shaq, and the two of them crash through the tables on the floor. Red Velvet spears Jade Cargill, who only kicks out at 2. She's being coached by Arn, and then Red Velvet gets countered and hit with a glam slam. Jade Cargill pins her in 12 minutes and 2 seconds. We cut to Shaq. The man is unconscious on the floor selling this table spot, and he ends up being taken out on a stretcher. We'll get to that. For what this match needed to be, I think this is the best you could have asked for. For Jade Cargill, this is like her first match in front of a crowd. I thought she did tremendous as well. Shaq, for what your bar is, this guy was not Pat McAfee. I know people will be comparing the two, and he kind of put that comparison out there. He was not Pat McAfee.
He's a far bigger name than Pat McAfee.
Far bigger name. Yes, and his performance is going to be graded tomorrow at 4:00, not tonight at 8:15 p.m. So, listen, Shaq, I think he did just fine in this. I thought this match was, I don't know how you could be disappointed with this for what your expectations should have been. And Cargill, she could be a gigantic star. This is even Red Velvet, very early into her career as well. Like, I thought they really shined a lot, but I was very impressed with Jade.
Anytime I think you try to trade celebrity with the potential for subpar wrestling, the hope is simply that the wrestling is good enough to not embarrass the company, and that the celebrity is into it. And I think you had both of those things. Shaq was clearly having a lot of fun here, being, training a good deal to do some of the spots that he was able to do. The guy took a table bump, seemed to be having a lot of fun. And overall, it was an entertaining match. Just the thrill of seeing Shaquille O'Neal wrestling a match in there. He looked perfectly fine. This was not an obtrusive segment. It didn't overstay its welcome. And we'll see what the results are tomorrow about how many eyeballs this must have gotten AEW and by extension AEW Revolution. So I personally have no complaints at all. Jade Cargill, as you mentioned, got the big victory here on the biggest stage that she's ever wrestled in front of. Red Velvet looked very good. This match very much put both of them on the map. And we could expect, some a full-time announcement for Red Velvet, I would imagine. If not already, then very soon.
Yeah, that was noted by Cody that he was fairly certain she was still on a retainer deal on their Tier 0 contract, but was pushing for her to get a full-time deal. And he also hedged that where he wasn't 100% sure if she hadn't already been bumped up to that. But given this spot that she was placed in, I think that would have been a formality. This came off really well. Shaq is taken out on the stretcher. And then after the break, Tony goes into the ambulance and Shaq has disappeared.
I wonder what they're doing. I
thought we were going to get him later in the night, but maybe he was in a state of Shaqnosis.
Shaqnosis. Okay. Yeah, I think, clearly he didn't just escape. We've seen disappearance acts before in wrestling, and always that it tends to happen with people with supernatural powers. So I think they're trying to tell us that this isn't just any sort of Shaquille O'Neal. This will be Shaq Fu or Kazam. Maybe Kazammed out of there.
Oof. Okay. Well, this supernatural character I'm enjoying more than the Monday night version. So we will see if Shaq disappears and reappears at a later date. Pac and Rey Fenix are my new favorite tag team. They came out and dismantled John Skyler and D3, just doing all their spots on these guys. Phoenix super kicks D3 off the apron. They double team Skyler. Phoenix does the rope walk, kicking D3. Fosbury flop by Pac. 450, driver from Phoenix, and a 69 seconds this thing goes. I could watch Pac and Phoenix do this for 6 weeks, and then they get a tag title shot. This was so entertaining for the short time it lasted.
A fun showcase for these two. I agree with you. It's a fresh new tag team. I know Penta and Phoenix are sort of like your default team between the two, but I think the Pac and Phoenix team, I'm digging even that much more because it's fresh and they're so fast. They're almost like sort of like a meaner version of the Young Bucks, and I can't wait to see them. Like, I want to see them actually contend for the tag team title, so I hope they go far together.
I think they should win this Battle Royal. They certainly implied they've been added to the Battle Royal with their run-in later tonight. I think they should win that thing.
That would be great.
Chris Jericho and MJF are out with the Inner Circle, and Dasha is hosting the press conference with the wrestling media. So we had appearances by Robbie Fox of Barstool Sports, who unfortunately his microphone was dead. So Jericho just cut a promo about past tag team partners he has had that he has won championships with, mentioning Dwayne Johnson and AEW's own Paul Wight, but none of them are better than MJF, and talked about beating up the Bucks on Sunday, just like they beat up their stupid father. Our next question comes from Conrad Thompson, who asks about Sammy Guevara. And Conrad is insulted. MJF calls him turkey tits, and they're told to never state Sammy's name again. Then up came Wai Ting to the podium. It was Brandon Walker from Barstool Sports, so a lot of Barstool integration here, who asked about Papa Buck's attack. MJF cut a promo on malnourished Matthew and not so slick, I wish my hair was way more thick, Nick. That the beatdown on them on Sunday will be worse than the one they delivered to Papa Buck. And Santana asks if it was smart of the Bucks to bring their bitch-ass dad to TV last week. And our final question from media member Eric Bischoff, who asks for an update on Papa Buck and asks Chris how dumb his decision to motivate the Young Bucks ranks on his all-time list of worst ideas. I thought for sure Jericho's comeback was going to be listing off Eric's dumb ideas.
Yeah, I guess they just have Eric Bischoff like on speed dial for any.
He's
of
probably on a retainer contract at this point. Yeah, just call up Eric when they need a talking segment.
A press conference guy, surprise appearance. Yeah, this was fun.
So it was pretty much just a way for Jericho and MJF to cut promos on the Young Bucks, and then the Young Bucks come out at the end. And listen, for all my complaints about Matt when he has to cut the angry promos, this is exactly what we said last week they needed to do. And this was a tremendous promo from Matt. He talked about all the lessons that their father taught him and Nick. And it was all of the things that Jericho and MJF's fathers failed to do. Our dad taught us to dream big. When he couldn't afford to send us to college, he improvised, building a ring in our backyard with his bare hands. He said, you don't just stand there and let others do the work, you do it yourself. And that DIY spirit created the Young Bucks. It created Being the Elite. It even helped create this company. Without our dad, there probably wouldn't be an AEW. And without AEW, MJF would be living with his parents at home, waiting for a call from the Rosie O'Donnell show. While Chris, you'd probably be jerking the curtain at the Performance Center tonight. He taught us to stand up for ourselves, and sometimes you've got to kick some ass. And they super kick Jericho and MJF. Brandon Cutler's out. Big brawl. Gallows and Anderson are out. They set up a table, and we've got Ortiz on the table by the entrance while Santana is on a table ringside. So Nick does a swanton off the entrance, and Matt leaps off the stage with an elbow. Fantastic segment.
Very good segment. Good promo from Matt, I thought.
Really good promo from Matt.
Yeah, really kind of, like just hammered home what his dad meant to him, and by extension what the attack meant to him. So I think a good final bit of promo exchange to really kind of milk that attack from last week.
What are the odds that Ted Irvin is there on Sunday and Papa Buck's gonna get some revenge?
Ooh, I don't know. I feel like I got Ted on that one.
Okay, well, Ted Irvin, I think he he would be the favorite. So they air a video for the exploding barbed wire death match. We've got highlights of FMW, and then appearing on TSN2 is Atsushi Onita to explain the concept of this match. What the barbed wire will do, it will cut you mercilessly. Kenny Omega, Moxley, I think the rules you've added to this match are spectacular and very fitting for you two. I remember years ago when Shinsuke Nakamura was making the leap up to the main roster, and Wei and I were banging our heads against the wall, stating, why don't they lean on what worked so well on the New Japan on Access show? Subtitles. If anyone is anti-subtitle, thinking it can't get someone over, my God, Atsushi Onita, I wanted to see this dude show up on Sunday and challenge the winner.
Oh, I think that countdown has just begun. I mean, how long before we see Onita in an AEW ring?
I don't discount it, but the fact that they went out and got Onita to cut a promo for this, I thought this video was awesome. I thought this show was just, by this point, this is an excellent, excellent show. Every segment, I thought they were hitting it out of the park.
I wonder what
they were trying to accomplish.
I wonder what that phone call was like. You know, who got into contact with whom to get to Atsushi Onita?
Well, this was the promo you needed. I thought like the footage they got, like you see this video, you want to see what this thing is going to look like on Sunday.
Definitely. Yes.
So, and then we go from Atsushi Onita to FTR walking out with Tully Blanchard and JJ Dillon.
Bizarre.
Dude, this was Tony Khan's like deep, like this was like every crazy idea he was able to just come out with on this show. I want JJ Dillon out there. Can we get Onita on camera?
Put him on after Shaq.
So here we are, FTR. They also had a banner promoting AEW Dynamite, voted as best wrestling TV show for 2019 and 2020. They could have printed out a lot of banners after last week, I guess.
Yeah, I reckon. Did it say the Observer Awards?
I don't know if it actually listed it as the Observer Awards or just best television show.
Okay.
But we did have the banner. FTR and Tully against the Jurassic Express. It begins with a Jungle Boy going for the snare trap on Dax, but Cash breaks it up, so he applies the snare trap to Cash on the floor, who's tapping out. J.J. Dillon passes his shoe to Dax, who nails Jungle Boy, and he kicks out from J.J.'s shoe. Tully then sees them on the floor. He teases a dive, pulls up, and he does a strut. Awesome. Just awesome. We go through the picture-in-picture. Luchasaurus press slams Marco Stunt onto Tully. FTR then attack Luchasaurus. Double German from Luchasaurus to both members of FTR. They hit the Power and Glory onto Jungle Boy. There's a Dragon Suplex, which Marco Stunt breaks up with a splash. And then Tully Blanchard lifts up Marco Stunt and delivers the Slingshot Suplex. Tully then eats a spinning wheel kick. Jungle Boy dives, but this mystery man gets in the way, strikes Luchasaurus with a camera, and then the three members hit the spike pile driver onto Luchasaurus. Tully Blanchard pins Luchasaurus. In 11 minutes and 18 seconds, the Masked Man reveals himself as Sean Spears.
Yeah, as I guess the five of them kind of, posed down for a bit of a four horsemen type of thing. I thought this was fun. This was sort of, kind of your second novelty match in the same hour, but much of this show feels like it's a bit of a love letter to like wrestling fans of any genre or any era even.
Dude, this was like our Crockett tribute, an hour before the news came out.
Yeah, I thought there are some really good spots here with Tully. He looked pretty good considering just, he just had to look good for certain spots, and he did. That slingshot suplex.
He did. The slingshot suplex was the most ambitious thing. Like, he didn't need to do a whole lot. Like, the slingshot suplex was more than I was expecting from him.
And Marco Stunt is absolutely the perfect opponent to pair with any of these legends to make them look dominant. So thank goodness for Marco being in a match like this.
So with all of them in the ring, out comes Arn Anderson just to look from the stage. He puts up the 4 sign and JJ returns it. And yeah, we definitely got the indication of this allegiance in the ring. I wonder if we will see JJ again.
Did you think Arn's coming out here was supposed to be some sign that he's going to be in on this, or was it just more of a?
I think it's a tease. Yeah.
Oh, you do think it's a tease?
I think it's something of. I think they will dangle this for a while of why did Arn come out, and whether it's to oppose these guys or to have some involvement. I think they're going to link Arn somehow in a story with this group.
So, I mean, if you're looking at the 4 of them, I mean, it's Shawn Spears, it's FTR, and it's Tully Blanchard. So is Tully going to wrestle again?
I would not put Tully in the ring again anytime soon. Like, he should do, like, the 1 match per year kind of thing.
I wouldn't either. I would hope that they have somebody else in store to, fill that 4th role. And he could be the JJ of the group.
I think that's kind of the lingering thing, is someone else eventually joining this group. And I think with Arn, the tease will be, for a while will be, is this going to be Cody's group? Shivani is on the stage. He plugs AEW Dark and Elevation. And as he's plugging it, JJ's on his way to the back and just pipes in, it's not going to be any better than what you just saw. And Tony goes, you're not getting paid anything more. This felt like a total just off the cuff, like improv by JJ.
Nice. I like
that. Was it. And he was off.
Yeah. Loose. Cool.
Shivani brings out Paul Wight in his new shirt, No More BS. And White asks, did any of you see this turn coming? So all points for self-awareness. He's happy to be in AEW, plugs the new show, and he's got a big scoop. This Sunday, AEW is going to sign a Hall of Fame bound star, which will be revealed on the pay-per-view.
By him.
By Paul Wight. Paul Wight is going to break the news on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, it's something, I guess, relevant that you can promote with Paul Wight on the pay-per-view. They're making a bit of a big deal out of this, so they kind of have to deliver. Who do you think it is?
I'm not going to guess, but I'm going to reserve judgment till we see who it is. I think that it's, what I don't want is what I've been saying is like that you're almost in this trap of having to deliver these surprises and feeling a need to constantly top yourselves. Like if it's another guy that's, post 50, I'll probably question it. Yeah, no matter how big the star is. I think, but again, we don't know who it could be. It could be a young person too. Hall of Fame bound does not have to mean older veteran.
Yeah, Hall of Fame bound it could be man or woman.
It could be anyone. Yeah.
So it's really tough to guess right now.
So we'll see on Sunday, but it's a hook. It's something, TNA did this a lot where it was always promising, someone showing up on Sunday, and they got into a trap of doing that a lot. So I just don't want to see that happen here where, I said it when Sting came in that, there'll come a time when you want to just pop a number and then, you get into this and suddenly it's, is it subtraction by addition? So after this, they noted for the buy-in on Sunday, a new match. It'll be Rebel and Britt Baker against Thunder Rosa and Riho. So very loaded card on Sunday. Nyla Rose versus Ryo Mizunami. Hikaru Shida was seated ringside. Ryo was just so animated here. She's delivering these huge chops, does this big elaborate begging for forgiveness to Aubrey Edwards, and then winds up like she's Dusty Rhodes delivering another. Rose misses with a swanton, and Ryo shoulder tackles her off the apron, hits a leg drop onto the edge of the apron, and they tease the count out again, just like Aja Kong. And Excalibur was on top of things to tie these two together, how she beat Aja Kong. But Nyla Rose gets in at 9, is hit with another leg drop, but Nyla comes back, knee strike off of the top, gets a near fall. Ryo hits an exploder, a release German, spear, and a guillotine leg drop. Finally keeps down Nyla Rose, and Ryo Mizunami wins the Eliminator tournament 12-48. And then Shida is presenting the trophy to Ryo. They shake hands, and the announcers are getting ready to throw to break when all of a sudden Rio nails her with a forearm, and as they're holding hands from the shake, they're still striking one another. And just like some physicality to go in with some edge to this match, instead of them being respectful friends, we're going in with a bit of a grudge.
Yeah, I like the bit of physicality at the end. I mean, you kind of need a little bit of something because Ryo Mizunami is a real unknown to this audience. I did expect the person on the Japanese side of the bracket to eventually win, but I did not expect it to be her. At least, thinking that it would probably be somebody like instead like Yuka Sakazaki or Maki Ito, who seems to have gained a bigger reputation for this audience. Instead, you're going in with a relative unknown. But it gets a new name into this division, and they put her over strong here with the win over Nyla Rose, which very few people get. And it does present a fresh match for Shida. I thought the match tonight, I thought it was just kind of okay. For a first impression stateside, I kind of felt Mizunami's gimmick a little overdone at parts, especially without a crowd there to really kind of react and recognize it. But it did feel like an authentic presentation.
Yeah, it did. It's a big match for Sunday for the two to have. I think you've put a lot of effort into this tournament, so the hope is that they have a really, really big match on Sunday. I liked the match. I didn't think it was stellar, but I liked it. Shivani welcomes Sting, who comes out. He found out several weeks ago he was not ready when he was powerbombed by Brian Cage. But he thanks him because that powerbomb shook off the excess ring rust. Now he's ready for a street fight. Ricky Starks interrupts. He's man enough to admit that Sting still has it. But then slaps Sting, stating, "You are no icon." So Sting attacks him, Stinger Splash, Scorpion Deathlock, and that prompts Powerhouse Hobbs and Hook to run in. Cage joins in, goes for another powerbomb when Darby jumps Brian Cage. Splash to the back, and then a drop kick by Darby clears the ring with Sting and Darby Allin standing tall. I think last week was the big segment. This was just to kind of further what they had done last week, but I think there's interest in this match. I think that the physicality with Sting, people have a higher expectation level for this match, but I think at the same time, hoping that they are still careful with Sting's physicality. The guy is 61.
Yeah, I think there's a curiosity to see like how much of a match Sting can wrestle. I do feel like coming off of, I suppose, like the Tully match, it doesn't necessarily make this company feel like it feels maybe a little one too many of these types of like, novelty. Hey, like it's an old guy. How well will he wrestle type of matches? But Sting is, of course, the big one that you've been building up for weeks now. I thought this closing segment was fine. Pretty typical closing segment. We know that Sting can bump a bit. Now we await the match.
Max Caster versus 10 from the Dark Order. Preston Vance. He came out with Dark Order, including -1. And we had Scorpio Sky on commentary. Caster rapped about Lady Gaga's dog walker, 10 being only a 5 without the mask, and compares his looks to Ronnie Garvin after he got hit with the fireball, which was the closest we got to a Jim Cornette reference on the show, who delivered the fireball. Caster attacks his arm, used a brain buster, and then went for the claim to fame elbow off the top. And then Jack Evans showed up ringside, blasted 10 with a boombox, and this gave Max Caster the win in 8:52. That was also with the picture-in-picture break that they had in the middle. And then it was revealed that Evans was paid off by Matt Hardy, $4,200, as Matt Hardy is decimating the members of the Dark Order. I would say for these two, this was kind of a big spotlight in this qualifier. I wouldn't say this match really hit that for me. It just, I don't know. It really didn't, wasn't that strong to me.
It's just the match didn't make too big of an impression on me. Caster, has been gaining a lot of buzz for doing the rap gimmick, and I think that'll be his biggest contribution to the pay-per-view, coming out and delivering some lines. And this also continues the Matt Hardy Dark Order story. And then, like Scorpio Sky was all over the commentary here, and it felt like he was really trying hard to get people's attention, and I feel bad for the guy because they haven't done anything to get us excited about his chances of winning this thing.
No. When was the last time he was on Dynamite?
Yeah, hasn't had a strong win, hasn't really been able to cut a promo. He's just like, a guy that they just slot in. And, he could win. It could be the start. I think maybe he even should win. Could be the start of a push for him. But I just feel like he's been relatively cold recently. And him being on commentary here just felt like, guys, look at me. Put the camera on me. I'm still here too,
Well, that was part of this character that he was trying to add to it too, being like the arrogance of it. And it was, I don't know, to me, it wasn't like a smooth transition for him. I didn't think this segment like really accomplished what it was setting out to do. And they also continued to tease there will be a sixth person in the ladder match. So I guess they're keeping that a mystery.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe that's the signing.
So they promoted a special edition of Dark on Saturday night. Miro cut a promo for the tag match. He has no other option but to hurt Charles. And for all the people that want to see him stop playing games, that's going to happen on Sunday. And yeah, so that's our big promo for the tag match.
Not excited for that match at all. I think the feud has been terrible. And none of the follow-up stuff since they've done the wedding has gotten me the least bit interested in it. They've managed to take my interest down considerably for an Orange Cassidy match, which is quite the feat. This promo is about as generic, I'm going to beat you up promo as you could get. So, yeah, the match could be great. Sure.
And the main event was Matt Hardy and Mark Quinn against Hangman Page and John Silver. Excalibur notes it's not just Matt and Hangman's wrestling income on the line Sunday, but also their licensing money.
Licensing money. Wow.
Boy, this is huge.
What was that, like Pro Wrestling Tees merchandise? And
they were mentioning them. Yeah, the action figures are out now. This is gonna be a rough quarter for the loser. Hardy hit a side effect to Silver on the edge of the apron. Hangman got the hot tag. They did a deal where like Hardy was sending Quinn in as the sacrificial lamb, but then when things would turn, Hardy would tag himself in. The twist of fate got countered. Silver tagged himself in to spear Hardy, hit him with this flurry of kicks and a brainbuster. But then Quinn comes back in. It ends with a pop-up powerbomb and suplex from Silver, buckshot lariat, and Page pins Quinn in 11:02. Hardy, after the match, attacks with the microphone. He says he's going to take everything Page has. Neither him nor John Silver will make it to the pay-per-view, which, for all the money on the line, I think you'd want Page to make it to the pay-per-view. That'd be kind of silly to attack him and take him out of the match. Then his money isn't at stake. So, not a well-thought-out plan. Dark Order ran out to fight off Hardy, and then all the members of the Casino Battle Royale ran out for the big show-closing brawl, and Phoenix and Pac joined the mix. So, presumably they're in as well. And that's how we went off the air, with the chaotic brawl as we go into Revolution.
I thought it was a pretty good match. I think, anytime you have Page in there and Silver, who continues to look fantastic, you can guarantee at least, pretty decent performance. I like the two of them as a team. I'm not sure if this would have been the thing I would have went off the air with. I really think the show needed to close with something from the main event in Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley. To me, that's the main draw of this show. It's the match with the most interest. And I think they needed to do better than the video. And I know that, they told you to just stick around for the countdown show, but not everybody's going to stick around for that. And, something like this to me felt more like a mid-show segment. So it was a good show overall, but I would have, to kind of hammer home like the pay-per-view, I would have done something live in person with the main event.
I was okay with the Moxley promo last week, but I agree. I think Omega needed to do like a serious promo on this. And I think what they're relying on, I love the video. I thought the video was really strong. I think it's more so like they're very much relying on the novelty of this concept as like the big final image is just the destructiveness of this match that they wanted the video to convey. I was more so, when I saw this tag match was going into the ring last, I thought for sure you have to do something with Shaq at the end. Like that was kind of left dangling. So that's what I was expecting before the show went off the air, but did not happen.
You might get that next week. Yeah, we'll see. His
Maybe.
Appearances are going to have to be sporadic, but he's going to be the new Undertaker, I think. Just vanishing and then reappearing.
Overall, I thought this was a really great go-home show. I would say the first 90 minutes were pretty excellent. I thought maybe they the last half hour slowed down a bit, but I thought overall, especially that first hour 20 minutes, I mean, this thing was just I thought every segment was just clicking, hitting. They had such a great mix of stuff, from different surprises to piquing your interest for the matches you want to see. I thought the Shaq thing delivered. You've got just all these little things. Like, I thought this was a very, very solid go-home show. Like, I would imagine if you were kind of debating about getting this pay-per-view on Sunday and you watched this show, I think it would have pushed you to get the show on Sunday. So I think it accomplished what the goal was.
I thought it was a fun show.
Well, let's see what the form.
Do you want to go through the card?
Yeah, let's look at it real quickly, what we have. So, for Sunday, Kenny Omega, Jon Moxley, exploding barbed wire death match. I think Omega wins this one.
I think so too. I think he's really just begun his championship reign, but he's got the big belt collector storyline going on, so we can probably expect Kenny to retain. But it's more so, what I'm curious about is how much punishment both men take, to what kind of standard they live up to with the exploding barbed wire death match. With Onita appearing and like them showing the clips, I think they have a whole lot to live up to. So I hope both men stay safe, but you can probably really guarantee that it'll be quite the spectacle, and you'll probably see a lot of blood.
Given the two involved, I mean, they're going to go out to try and have a great match on top of a spectacle. And if you've watched some of these matches, like, they're not great matches. Just like, they're really not designed to be like, critically acclaimed matches. Like, they're there for shock and violence. And with these two, like, this is not going to be a 10-minute deal. It's I think they're going to try and have this. They're going to try and go and have like the most critically acclaimed exploding barbed wire death match ever. And I think it's very important that not just the loser, but I think the winner should like not appear for several weeks after. Like, they should really sell the effects of this. Like, I think the loser needs, like, if it's Moxley losing, that he disappears for a while. Like, this needs to be a match that it lives in infamy in terms of the destruction that the two men went through.
I don't disagree. What does the pregnancy timeline work out for him like?
I can't remember. I don't know what they're looking at, but I think regardless, like, I think if Moxley, you could definitely take him out of that role and come back at a later time, and maybe explore different things with Moxley afterwards when he comes back. Give him a bit of a break, and Kenny Omega continues the belt collector deal, and Moxley resurfaces at another point. Maybe it's like him coming back with like a more of a heel edge to him. The ladder match, we have Cody Rhodes, Scorpio Sky, Penta, Lance Archer, Max Caster, and Mystery Person.
Well, we have to know who this mystery person is, but I can't really say that there's been... You know what? Archer has a ton of momentum behind him. Penta, not that much. Really, the only person I see... I mean, I can... If they want to just kind of like, shoot somebody up there right away, I guess it could be Kenta. Now that I look at the layout, I don't think it'll be Scorpio Sky. I don't think it'll be Max Caster. I don't think it'll be Cody Rhodes. So you got Archer, who's a contender, Penta, who I think is also a contender, and this TBA, who would probably be the biggest contender if it's a big enough name.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it, like, I'm kind of leaning towards this mystery person. This could be where they finally kind of give Penta something significant to go with. Like, he's sort of not been a front and center character outside of like the Bucks feud, but as a singles performer, like, maybe that's someone you heat up here. I mean, we're talking about a match with Darby Allin here. It's not, something that is... I think that gives you latitude that you could go pretty much with anyone here. But I'm kind of curious with this mystery person, because I think there's a fairly decent chance that mystery person could win this thing. Cody seems like the obvious pick, but almost too obvious that
He's already faced Darby, though.
I want to take a break before Darby and Cody have another match. Like, they did a bunch together that I think it should be built up way down the road before they revisit that match. I don't think they need to go to it now.
If it's the face of Revolution, I feel like they're going to be a little cheeky with that and the mystery person.
The mystery person, that could be their tagline. Yeah.
Yeah, whoever has a really interesting face. What do you think about when you think of face?
Who has an interesting face?
I had the return of Dash and Cody Rhodes.
Okay.
No.
How about Hangman Page and Matt Hardy in the big money match?
It's such a goofy, ridiculous storyline, but the results could be really funny with skits. I think
Matt Hardy wins, and he becomes AEW's Cameron Grimes.
I think Matt Hardy wins. Yeah, sell the gimmick.
Does that mean Hangman's broke for this quarter? Or?
Yeah. Wouldn't we rather a broke, like, cowboy than like a rich cowboy? That's on the other show.
What about broke Matt Hardy?
Broke Matt Hardy. Yeah. Broke Matt Hardy. Yep. That's, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's as intriguing.
How about as a match? How long does this one go?
Oh, I could see them going like 15. Just because I think like Matt Hardy has a lot of like creative leeway, and he's probably going to want to do a whole lot more than
this is going to be a long show on Sunday.
Oh God, I know. 9 matches, including the kickoff. So, yeah, I can't say like in ring I'm really looking forward to this one. You know, it's Adam Page versus Matt Hardy, and Matt Hardy hasn't had the best track record of like pay-per-view matches in AEW, but
Hangman has.
It's Page. Page has. Yep.
Yeah. Hikaru Shida and Ryo Mizunami. I just think given like the stakes and how much this has been built up, I think this one has to get like 15, 17 minutes. I think it's going to be a lengthy one. I think Shida should retain.
I think Shida retains. You know, like Ryo Mizunami potentially coming in, beating Nyla Rose, and then beating Shida is a great way to push somebody who's strong. I just don't really see that in Ryo Mizunami. Like if it was somebody who was just like incredible, like Asuka level, coming in and just like, you know, being like somebody you're completely confident can lead the division, I think you do that type of push. I don't think Ryo Mizunami is that type of person, at least not from what I've seen. So I really feel like this will probably just be a way to build up to, you know, an interesting match for Hikaru Shida, maybe a strong one for Shida. And then ultimately Shida goes on to another program with some of the other women in the division.
Sting and Darby Allin against Brian Cage and Ricky Starks in a street fight. Now this is expected to be like, we're expecting a cinematic match, but I don't think that they have not stated that.
I don't think so anymore. Like they made such a big deal about Sting being able to take bumps that this might just be a straight up like live thing. Like cinematic would suggest like what, multiple angles, like you know, retakes, things like that. I don't think I don't know if we're gonna get that.
They're definitely pushing this like this is just going to be a regular match. I think that's what people are expecting. I think it's going to be well done, whatever it is. I am not too worried about this match delivering. I think that it's going to. I think actually being in front of a crowd will help this, and I think that they're going to be very smart with how this is laid out and what Sting can do, what Sting should not be doing. That I think that this one, you know, for that crowd, even a limited one of, you know, whatever they have, 1,100 or so people, I think they're going to make a lot of noise for this one. I think Sting will mean something wrestling that, you know, fans typically, when they see something that's like considered special, I think Sting will feel special on this show, wrestling.
I think so too. I think it'll be a crowd that'll be very respectful of Sting and they'll treat him like a big deal. So much of this is going to be on Brian Cage and Ricky Starks to make him look good. I'm in particular looking at Ricky Starks, who I think will be doing the bulk of the selling for the both of Darby Allin and Sting here. I think Darby Allin too. You know, I mean, to me, it'll be Starks and Allin that I'm looking to do the bulk of the heavy lifting. In Brian Cage as well, but To me, it's like a big match for those three, just simply being in there in a sort of a big match with a legend.
The Bucks versus the Inner Circle for the tag titles. I think this one should be pretty strong. I think that I would definitely keep the titles on the Bucks. I just think there's so much to do with them in that tag division. Inner Circle doesn't need the titles. I think there's enough story for them to keep busy for months with what they're doing, that the tag titles, I don't need them to be a prop for a couple of months for Jericho and MJF to continue their story. I don't think they need them, and I think it kind of holds up the tag division to do that. You have so many great teams that the Bucks, I would definitely keep it on them, and given the story, they should win this match.
Yeah, I don't see a total change here, but I think the point of Jericho and MJF teaming up, number one, is to continue their story, but also to be able to promote a big match like this on a pay-per-view. I'm expecting the match to be really good. We've seen Jericho and MJF team up not that often, but the times that we have seen, they've been great together from just a psychological and match layout standpoint. So in terms of storytelling, I really look forward to seeing what these two can do with the Bucks. So, and on a big stage like a pay-per-view, you're guaranteed at least, a pretty substantial 15+ minute match. So I'm really looking forward to this match. And of course,
how they lose too. Like, I think the best mileage is Jericho ends up taking the fall and you're left with MJF having that reason, that logic that he can use of Jericho being the weak link.
Mm-hmm. Some other elements attached to this. Do we see Gallows and Anderson? Do we see Sammy Guevara make a return?
I think all that's on the table. Yeah, I think you could see a lot of that on the show. The Casino Tag Team Battle Royale. So we got Bear Country, Reynolds and Silver, Uno and Grayson, Santana and Ortiz, Butcher and the Blade, Private Party, Top Flight, Death Triangle, Griff Garrison and Pillman Jr., Matt Sydal and Mike Sydal, Frankie Kazarian and Christopher Daniels, who, my God, that story has been just so forgotten about on Dynamite. And then Dustin Rhodes, QT Marshall, and TBA is listed here. So maybe another team's entering.
TBA. I mean, we just talked about it. Give me Death Triangle with Pac and Phoenix going up for those title shots and potentially challenging the Bucks. That would be an awesome match. I can also see like Alex Reynolds and John Silver, a very hot team right now. Hard for me to think about many other.
Kazarian and Daniels could win this if you're going to that. But to me, that's the title shot should come at the end of this story. And I just feel, that awesome start to it on the Britt Baker segment. And it's just, to me, it was a great start, and they haven't followed up on it at all. To me, it'd be too out of left field for them to win here, and we're, boom, just going to the tag title match. So
yeah. Does this count if they lose this?
Well, they haven't even explained that. You should know that going in. And if it is, they shouldn't be, if they're not winning, they shouldn't be in this then. This isn't a win. It doesn't go down on your record as a no contest if you're eliminated.
I don't know if the timing of that storyline should have occurred at the time that it has, because we've not seen them much, if at all, on Dynamite. I mean, it's really just taken place on Dark. And so probably not being given the focus that it deserves.
The buy-in we mentioned, Rio and Thunder Rosa against Baker and Rebel. And then in the main event, Orange Cassidy and Chuck Taylor versus Miro and Kip Sabian. That's Revolution on Sunday.
Save the best for last, eh?
Yes.
Yeah, what happens here? Okay, can the match can be good, right?
Oh,
do we agree?
I think it'll be fine. It's like, it's not one of the big matches on the show going in. I guess you're looking for if they kind of pull the trigger and do something with Miro of note, or like a Cassidy match should get over live. Like, I don't have any issues with like the match itself. It's just kind of when you're looking at what is the most interesting stuff on the show, this is down the list.
I see Best Friends winning, and I see them somehow breaking off to Miro versus Cassidy, which is probably the big match coming out of this.
All right, let's do feedback quickly here. Tonight, the show got an 8.52 on the forum. We start off with Johnny. Been a while since I gave feedback. I enjoyed the Shaq match. It was better than I had expected. It worked excellently to highlight Jade and Velvet. Big props to Shaq for taking the table spot. I hope we get the Bucks against Pac and Phoenix in the future. Seeing Tully wrestle was awesome and helping plant the seeds for AEW's Four Horsemen. Big fan of Nyla and Rio, and I hope that they have a great video package pre-match. Not their best main event this week, but it did its job building up the match on Sunday. Fantastic job hyping up the pay-per-view. Oh, he says, with a spot still not decided for the ladder match, what do you guys think of Ethan Page? If he wins, it can continue the rivalry from Evolve. Yes, that he had with Darby. That was quite the violent feud.
Would he qualify as a future Hall of Famer?
That's someone who's Hall of Fame bound. And listen, they could be two different things. I think Hall of Fame bound, I almost think it's a line designed for people to think about another older legend coming in when it's someone that's going to be not even in their prime yet. It could be someone very young. So I could totally see it being an Ethan Page.
We go to Mark, who says, the Shaq tag was a perfect celebrity match. A couple of big spots and put the shine on up and coming talent involved.
Kevin in Salt Lake, very noteworthy and fun go-home show. I enjoyed Red Velvet and Shaq's performances in the opener. Jade showed a ton of poise. DJ Diesel selling that table spot like he was napping cracked me up. Fun match. Onita hyping an exploding barbed wire death match on the 5-year anniversary of Hayabusa's death is a neat little detail. 8 out of 10.
We got a Noah from Vaughn, who says, insane show tonight. That opening tag was one of the best mixed tag matches I can remember. All 4 competitors really did well, but Jade came across like an absolute star in that one. She's going to do big things in AEW, no doubt. They did an incredible job of hyping up Sunday's pay-per-view, and in typical AEW fashion, put on one hell of a go-home show. 10 out of 10.
MJ from NJ. AEW produces one hell of a wrestling show every Wednesday, and when they want to step it up a notch, they can. There's something for everyone. I mean, where else can you get Shaq, Onita, callbacks to the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, and get some of the best in-ring work anywhere in this generation of wrestling?
We go to our next feed, Raymond, who says, put some respect on QT Marshall's name. His school that kept AEW afloat in April during the shutdown has shown its worth in another manner. Shaq has been training there. Jade Cargill, someone that the PC turned down, has been training there, all under the tutelage of QT Marshall and the rest of his coaches. And look at the spectacle they were able to deliver from unexpected places. When Cody isn't the star of the match, that's an impressive feat. Also, Red Velvet should be officially signed ASAP. 10 out of 10 Dynamite.
From Nick, this show had a ton to get through. Definitely lots of highlights. The 2-week build to Bucks against Jericho and MJF has felt heated, and I'm so glad they chose to spotlight Mizunami. The opener was also a blast, and it's a credit to everyone involved. Shaq is 48 and had a plethora of serious injuries towards the end of his NBA career. Seeing him execute a powerbomb and table spot is a luxury for AEW. On the flip side, this show had some uncharacteristically poor production. The awkward camera work, microphone issues, and commentary confusion almost made it feel like there was too much to accomplish tonight. There was that spear that Red Velvet hit, and the camera completely missed it. That was poor. Lastly, I don't mind Tully pinning Luchasaurus. He's at least 66 million years old. It's about time he puts over the younger talent. An extremely fun, if clunky, go-home show. 7.5 missed free throws out of 10.
And finally, we end things off with Kate, who will be my co-host for Rewind-A-SmackDown on Friday. She says, it's probably a sign that I need to take things less seriously, but I was legitimately anxious about the Shaq match going into tonight. But when it started off the show and turned out to be really enjoyable, that put me in a great mood. And that great mood persisted throughout the show, which was both fun in itself and a great go-home show for Revolution. Like a lot of people, I wanted either Britt or Rosa to win the women's tournament because I thought those were the strongest stories, but I've completely come around. Ryu is exhilarating to watch, and even if she's headed back to Japan afterwards, I'm happy to have the chance to see her in a variety of matches. I hope that she'll be on AEW TV more when it's easier to travel. I really hope that someone is making a gif of -1 standing on that stage, just gesticulating while the entire locker room brawls in the ring. I need that.
All right. Well, there we go. The final Dynamite before the pay-per-view on Sunday. As Wai mentioned, he's going to be back Friday night with Rewind-A-SmackDown, and he will be joined by the aforementioned Kate. I will be off Friday, but that is because I am back Saturday night with the UFC 259 post-show with Phil Chertok, where there are currently 15 fights scheduled on Saturday night. Sunday night, we've got the AEW Revolution post show. We will be live right after the pay-per-view for our double Ice Cap and Espresso members of the Post Wrestling Cafe. But Saturday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, it is the WANDAVISION finale with Wai Ting, W.H. Park, and Nate Milton. The Agnes Harkness of post wrestling.
Oh, Nate Milton. It was Nate all along?
Yes.
It was Milton all along. Yes. I'm looking forward to that one. That's going to be the highlight of my weekend for sure. The show drops sometime Thursday evening, Friday morning. It's giving you plenty of time to watch it before you join us live, 10 o'clock Saturday with the three of us, live for all Post Wrestling Cafe patrons. And Cafe patrons can have access to the entire show and all the archives for WANDAVISION afterwards as well.
So there is no way I'm going to be able to see WANDAVISION until like probably late Friday night. So can I ask, can I go on Twitter Friday and complain to everybody that reveals the surprise appearance that is being hyped up for this episode?
Yeah, we'll see how respectful people are. I definitely wouldn't get on social media if you care enough.
But wait a minute, the other way around is I am told I cannot talk about things after they've happened for a certain amount of time. So now that's the other way around. Does that mean Twitter is going to acquiesce to my schedule and no one is going to tweet about this thing on Friday? Because that's how I'm told it's supposed to work. They can tweet about it once I'm ready.
Yeah.
Or I could stay off Twitter. What seems more reasonable? Like if I wanted to not know this.
You know, at this point, I think complaining is just as reasonable as any other action. It's just a part of social media, is it not? So
I honestly won't. I know I'll see it on Friday, but that's fine. I'm more curious of how this person is introduced, and it's got to be something important, right? Like everyone seems to be building this up to be pretty significant. So
you're talking about the secret cameo that Paul Bettany has been talking about?
Yes.
Well, it could very well be Paul Bettany himself playing, the other Vision. Which would
whoever
be hilarious.
It is, I don't think it's going to have a whole lot of impact on me. It's like, I feel like I'm going to have to watch it to really get the appreciation for it. Because if you tell me that, oh my God, it's Nordawan from the Deep Cuts episode, the lost issue from 68-1, I'm not going to have any clue who this person is, the significance of it.
Yeah, Nordawan. I'm gonna have to ask WH for some comic recommendations for that one. But you're telling me, John, if Chthon showed up, you wouldn't lose your shit?
Dude, don't even get me started about Chthon. Dude, if it's fucking Chthon, shit, dude. Then this fucking Marvel franchise might as well just sit down and take a flush because that's where this comic is going.
Oh, fantastic.
All right. Yes. That's it, everyone. I've got a bio to write. Wai's got life to live. We are going to be back Friday night. It's Wai Ting and Kate with Rewind to SmackDown. Go to postwrestling.com. All the latest news is there. 15% off for all patrons. Store.postwrestling.com. The only shirt you need this week. It's the Marvel Showdown between myself and Mr. Ting, courtesy of our good pal, Robert Pearson.
That's right, yeah. So thanks everybody for listening. Thank you to everybody in the Zoom room listening to us right now, all you double Ice Cap and Espresso patrons. We'll see you this weekend.